In this video, I'm going to be continuing Job's third reply to Eliphaz. We have been looking at the Hebrew text, looking at pretty much each word grammatically, or for the most part, along with commentary, and we worked our way up to chapter 24, verse 11. For anyone that might be interested, we've been doing these videos on Job, and we have finished up to this point, as well as the speeches of Yahweh at the end of Job in chapter 28. So we are now at 24, verse 11. To just set the stage to where we're at, we're in Job's third reply to Eliphaz. We've seen this in chapter 23 on through 24. We worked our way up to 24, verse 11. In Job's reply to Eliphaz, he first of all expressed his frustration in trying to get a hearing with God to explain his innocency. And we see this in chapter 23. And he further mentions now his puzzlement at the good state of the wicked and what appears to Job to be God's indifference to it. And this is in chapter 24. And that's what we've been looking at. And we worked our way up through verse 10, and we're in verse 11. So what Job has said in chapter 24 basically is that God seems to be indifferent to what the wicked do, who remove the landmarks, they drive away the ass of the fatherless, they mistreat the widow, they turn the needy out of the way, they basically they despoil everything that other people have, and as a result, the people that suffer from them almost are likened to homeless people, and he describes that in the first 10 verses, how the wicked pluck the fatherless from the breast, they take the pledge of the poor, and so that the poor are hungry and going about because of the mistreatment of those that are evil. This brings us up to verse 11, where Job continues talking about how God seems to be indifferent to the wicked, and he's going to enumerate what he sees the unrighteous or those that are evil doing. So in verse 11, it reads, Bein shurotam yatshiru. They press oil out or within the rows of these men, or between their rows, literally. They press oil out. Notice here, Darahu is a Cal perfect third common singular, looking at how they make oil between the rows. I jumped to it, the next line. Between their rows, they press oil out. Yatsiru is from sahar, to press oil out. And here we have a hifil imperfect, third masculine plural from sahar. Notice the A-I vowel pattern indicative of a hifil stem. And between, shorotam is from shur, meaning row. And so between, plural, the rows of them, am is your pronominal suffix, third masculine plural. So between their rows, they press oil out. The wine presses they tread, and yet they suffer thirst. Notice Yekavim darachu vayitzmahu. Yekavim means the wine presses from the noun wine press. So the wine presses, yekev, here it's in the plural, yekavim. They press, they tread. Darahu is the cow perfect, third common third common plural from darak. So they pled the wine presses or tread the wine presses, vayitz mahu, and they suffer thirst. Notice the root sama, to be thirsty. It's the cow imperfect, third masculine plural from sama, with a vav consecutive, or a vav hafik, or a vav conversive. So what is he saying here? What he is saying, I believe, is the poor are forced to tread the olives and grapes within the walls of the vineyard of those that are well-to-do, so to speak, and are not permitted to quench their thirst. In other words, they work like slaves, but they're mistreated, is really what he's saying. And then he continues, verse 12, Me'ir metim yen haku, that is, from the city of men they groan. Notice may is just your preposition from. Men, the noon has elided, and we have compensatory lengthening under the mem with the seri. So from the city of men, like the populous city, metim would be men in the plural, masculine plural. Yenhaku, men, they groan. From out of the populace or from the city of men, they groan. Here we have yin aku, from na'ak, to groan. It's the cow imperfect, third masculine plural from na'ak, to groan. So we're looking again at those that are suffering, and the soul of the wounded cry out, he says. V'nefesh chalalim teshaveya. The soul of the wounded, nefesh is in construct with chalalim, meaning wounded. So the soul of the wounded, teshaveya, this is from a middle weak verb, shua. They cry out. We have the PL imperfect here. So the soul, actually, I should say the soul of the wounded cry out. Teshaveya is referring back to nefesh. And so we have a PL imperfect, third feminine singular from shua. Notice the shava pathak doubling of the middle radical in the vav here, indicative of a PL stem. So the soul of the wounded cry out, and then the Eloah lo yasim tifla. And yet God does not place an unseemly thing to them. In other words, to the people that are being mistreated by those that are wealthy and those that are not caring for the poor. And God seems to be indifferent, he's saying, and doesn't see anything that's unseemly or unsavory in what they're doing. Notice that Eloah is God here. Lo is your negative particle. Yasim is from the middle weak verb, seem, the cow imperfect, third masculine singular. So he does not impute anything that is unseemly. So the thought here is the economic and physical starvation which the wicked have forced upon the poor takes its toll. They are sickly and dying. Others have been wounded by their oppressors. They cry out to God for help, but he does not seem to hear. Seems to be Job's argument so far. So now we come to verse 13. And what Job does here, 13 and following, he enumerates what the wicked are doing. So after enumerating the socially accepted sins committed by the wicked, Job also now, I should say, lists the sins which they do in secret. These wicked rebel against the light of God's word and reject its paths, he says. So we see this in chapter 13, verse 13. Hema hayu b'mordei or. These are among those who rebel, who are rebelling of those that rebel against the light, or rebellers of the light. Notice Hema is your personal pronoun. They, Hayu, is the cow perfect, third common plural from Haya. They are, and I'm understanding be here, among or with the rebellers, those that are rebelling of the light. Morade is from marad, to rebel. We have a cow participle, masculine plural from marad. Notice we have the holum, indicative of the participle, and then we have the tserayot, putting it in the masculine plural. So they are among those that are rebellers of the light. Lo hikiru derachav. They do not know the ways. And I think the thought here, speaking, they do not know his ways, the ways of God, it seems. Lo is the negative particle. Hikiru is from the peinun verb nakar. And here we have a hifil, perfect, third common plural from nakar. The noon in this peinun verb has assimilated into the kaf. So hinkiru has become hikiru, causing the doubling of the kaf. They do not know his paths or his ways. Derechav is from derek, and here we have a noun in the plural construct with the vav. So the ways of him, and the vav is your pronominal suffix, third masculine singular. So what he's saying here is these wicked who are mistreating the poor rebel against the light of God's word, and they reject all of his paths. And that leads to the next phrase, velo yashavu bin votav, bin tivotav. So they don't abide or dwell in his paths. Velo is the conjunction followed by the negative particle. Yashavu is from yashav, to dwell or abide. Cow, perfect, third common plural from yashav. They do not abide in bin te votam. Netiva means path, and here it's a feminine plural in construct with the pronominal suffix third masculine singular in the of here, so in the vav. So they do not abide in his paths. That is, like we said, they rebel against God's word and they reject his paths. And so he begins to enumerate the evildoers and what they're like. He continues then in verse 14. La oriakum rotseach, that is, at the light, the murderer arises. Notice la or is to the light, or meaning light. Lamed is your inseparable preposition with the article in the comments below. So to the light, the one who murders or kills arises. Rutse is from ratsa, and the root. It's a cow participle, masculine, singular. And yakumu is from kum, a middle weak verb, cow imperfect, third masculine, singular. And in the night, he is yiktal ani ve'ebyon. That is, he kills the poor and the needy, speaking of the violent person. Yiktal is from katal, the cow imperfect, third masculine, singular, from katal. This is where grammarians speak of the yiktal form for the imperfect, katal form for the perfect. I prefer to use the verb kavad or shamar, which Winegreen, I think it was Lambden uses katab, I should say, and Winegreen uses shamar, which is what I have used when I taught out of Winegreen. So we read on here, the violent one does his violence to the poor and needy, u'v'layla yehi chaganav, and in the night he becomes as the thief. Notice u here is just your conjunction and. V'layla or v'layla means simply night. Yehi, he will do. He will be. The root is haya. It's the cow imperfect, third masculine, singular. He will be as the thief. Kaganav. Ka is your inseparable preposition. Ha, I should say. Ganav means thief. So what it seems, what the text seems to be saying here is that due to the intense heat of the desert, activity begins early in the Middle East. The traveler begins his journey and the laborer starts for his field. The wicked, though, are thus early waiting to rob and to kill the powerless. This, I think, is what he is saying. And where is God in not judging what is happening right away? I think that's Job's argument. And then as far as thieves, robbers will often kill their innocent victims and rob them in the morning to escape detection. At night, they then become thieves, stealing while their victims sleep. So he's looking, no doubt, at the wicked who are like robbers and who break in or dig in to homes, and they do it. They steal at night while their victims are sleeping. So then in verse 15, he continues to show the whole idea of or what evildoers and wicked men do. And so, and where is God? That seems to be his point. But ayin no'ev shamra neshef, that is, the eye of the adulterer waits for twilight. That is your conjunction here. Ain is from ayin. Here it's in construct with no'ev. No'ev is the cow participle masculine singular from na'af. So the eye of the adulterer, shamra nefesh, that is, waits for the twilight, I should say. Shamra is from shamar. It's the cow perfect third feminine singular. Notice the suffix. And nefesh means twilight. So waits for the twilight, the adulterous person. Lemor lo teshureni ayin, saying, no eye shall see me. Notice lemor is your cow infinitive construct from mar, and that's a very common expression. Lemor lo teshureni. Lo is your negative particle not, and teshureni is from shur, meaning to observe or to see. And here we have the cow imperfect, a third feminine singular because of the ayin. So no eye shall see me. And notice e here, a ni, the e here is your pronominal suffix, first person singular. So what is being said in this verse is seeking the protection of the darkness and disguising himself. The wicked also does acts of adultery at night, is the thought here. And then he continues describing what the wicked do and what they're like. Notice verse 16, Chatar bachoshek batim. He digs in the darkness into the houses, or he breaks in, digs in, literally, in the darkness, the houses. Chatar is the cow perfect, third masculine singular from chatar, meaning to dig, and bachoshek would be in the darkness. Ba is your inseparable preposition in with the article and the pathak under it, and choshek means darkness. So he digs in the darkness, the houses, or in the houses, understood, in. Batim is from bayit, and here it's a noun masculine plural with the im ending. So he digs in the house, in the houses, in the darkness, and then Yomam hitmu lamu. Notice this phrase reads during the day or in the daytime. Hitmu, they shut themselves up. Hitmu is from chatam, and I'm understanding this as a PL, perfect, a third common plural from chatam, to seal up. So by night, yomam, they seal up chatam for themselves. Lamo. They shut themselves up at night. And lo yadu'u or, they do not know the light. Lo is the negative particle, and yadu'u is from yada. It's the cow perfect, third common plural from yada. They do not know light, or meaning light. So when we look at this verse 16, houses in the Middle East were usually made of sun-dried mud bricks. Thieves then could easily dig a hole in the wall to break into someone's house. An example of this would be Ezekiel 12:7. Thus, these wicked that he's describing here also actively avoid the light in order to plunder another's house. And I'm reminded of the New Testament where Jesus warns that thieves might dig through and steal. So don't treasure up for yourselves treasures on earth where thieves can dig through and steal. So we now come to verse 17, which will finish his enumeration and his enumerating of what evildoers, describing them, are doing and what they're like. And so, and I thought about the New Testament where it says, men love darkness rather than light because their deeds are evil. And Job here is, in essence, saying the same thing. And then in verse 17, notice it reads on, verse 17, for the shadow of death is to all of them as the morning. Ki yakdav, for together, boker lamot salmavet. The morning to them is the shadow of death. Notice here, Ki here is giving the cause of what he's trying to describe, and all of them together, the morning, boker, for them, lamu, the preposition with the pronominal suffix third masculine plural, is to them salmavet. Salmavet means like deep darkness or shadow of death. Sal means shadow, mavet means death. However, it's one word in Hebrew, and it really refers to deep gloominess or deep darkness. And the morning to them is like that, I think he's saying, for they know the terrors of the night. In other words, they don't really do their evil often in the morning, he's seemingly saying, but it's night. Ki yakir balhot salmavet. That is, for he knows the terrors of the shadow of death or of deep darkness. Ki again is giving a causal clause here. Yakir is from nakar, to know. It's the Hiphil imperfect third masculine singular where the noon has assimilated yankir, a peinun root. For he knows the terrors of salmavet, of deep darkness. Bal hot salmavet. Now, the terrors of deep darkness, here we have a plural noun, feminine noun in construct with salmavet, deep darkness. So basically, what he's saying in verse 17, it seems to me, is they shrink away from the morning light as other men shun the blackest part of the night. So the darkness of the night is to these wicked men as the morning, and they are familiar with all of its terrors. That seems to be Job's point. And so what Job is saying here is that he's critiquing his friends who have said over and over that the righteous don't suffer. And what he's saying here, look at the wicked and what often they're doing, and yet where is God? And I've been innocent. That's in the background. So when we come to verses 18 to 24, and I'm going to stop here, it says, Job then, ironically, I believe, will quote his three friends in these verses. He has just illustrated the sins of the wicked without incurring the judgment of God, is his argument. He now, in effect, says, and you say, he is swift upon the face of the waters. That's what they had said. their portion is cursed in the earth, etc. And so, what Job is going to do is again critique what they have been arguing. And he's doing this all the way through. So, uh, I think I'll stop here. Just again, what he's doing, he's giving a reply, his third reply to Eliphaz, in which he is showing basically that their thesis is invalid. Often the wicked do horrible things, but where is God? And that is his argument. And of course, as he comes to the end of this chapter, he will say that the wicked also will die, even though they may die a pleasant death. And this, as far as not suffering some severe thing, they eventually all will succumb to that. But I think as we move on to other passages, certainly the wicked will be judged over and over. We see this, for example, in the Hebrew scriptures, like in Daniel chapter 12. There's a final judgment for those that are righteous and those that are wicked, and the wicked will be judged. And we see the same running through the New Testament over and over at the final judgment. There is a judgment to life and a judgment to eternal judgment. So, but I think fitting Job's argument into the overall context here is simply that he is critiquing his friends who have said, always, if you are suffering, it must be because you've done something wrong, Job. And he's simply arguing, no, there's a lot of people that do all kinds of hurtful things, but they don't seem to suffer in this life. But I'm suffering, and I'm an innocent person. That's his argument. And he's trying to critique the author of Job, the theology that bad things don't happen to good people. And that's really the essence of what I think the whole book of Job is about. And God will actually rebuke Job's friends at the end of the book. And I've already covered that in another number of videos. So if anyone is following, you can find on YouTube the different videos that we have done concerning the inductive Hebrew grammar, along with a running commentary. So thank you, and I'm hoping this is helpful. And we, like I said, when we come to the end of the book, God will critique all of his friends and their argument, and even critique Job. And then we must, see in other passages where God will judge everyone someday in a final reckoning, like Daniel 12 and Matthew chapter 25, and just a lot of passages, Revelation 19, and so forth. And so it's, the judgment will come. It's sort of like payday someday. And but Job is dealing with their arguments. That's the essence of what this chapter, I believe, is about, and trying to show that their argument is unsound, that the righteous don't suffer.